Thank you for joining us. My name is Jason. I'm the product lead here at Elevated Signals. Um, Today I wanted to focus a bit on the batch release cycle within your organizations and talk about how we can help you speed those things up by using our digital form module. Um, the format today here will maybe I'll go through a bit of a demo first, and then after that, we'll have some time for some Q&A, open questions. If you have anything comes up while I'm going through my demo, you can feel free to just throw them into the Q&A section, and then we'll get to those after the demo. So to start things off, I want to talk a little bit about what are the types of things that slow us down when we're trying to release our product and review our batches. Um, could be anything from errors, data entry errors, right? Maybe missing fields, missing information. Could be entire forms. Maybe could go missing. Um, Things like internal communication. Maybe if there are errors on those forms, um, just communicating with the right people to make sure that those forms are corrected and then handed back in a timely manner. Could be even stuff like photocopying forms if you're using paper forms. Just getting the right ones ready for when the work needs to be done. And then on top of that, if you're using paper forms, just having physical paper moving around in your facility, whether that means qualities, gowning up and getting into the facility and grabbing the the paperwork that they need, or if it needs to, float around through the right desks and then land in the right folder to then get pulled into the right office. And then on top of that, it's just when it's time to review, is everything collected? Is there a priority to organizing those things? What has been reviewed, what hasn't been reviewed can be kind of hard to figure out sometimes. And then finally, just overall diagnosing issues, whether that's short term or long term. So, why is this particular run taking a long time this week? Or, you know, in general, why does our bulk packaging take so long to do? Could be questions that you have, kind of difficult to answer. So I'm going to run through a demo where we just do a packaging run, and I'm going to make a form and show some things off that can hopefully help tackle a lot of these pain points. So let me just switch over. I'm going to pop over to my work orders. I've got an open packaging run. Open this up and we'll take a look at it. We've got some inputs, we got our outputs, we got instructions. In terms of just tracking the data, it's all there, right? It looks done, but it's unclear whether or not if it's really ready to be reviewed or not, and ready to be released. We don't really have any idea of where the paperwork is at. Have we done all of our checks? All that kind of good stuff. So I'm going to create a digital form, and then we're going to attach it to this work order, and then we'll see all of the different mechanisms that can exist around that can hopefully make this view a lot more informative. So I'm going to pop over to the quality section and go into form management. I'm going to make a new form, and I'm going to call this 8.5 gram packaging in process check. I'll pop up at the top there. I'll click in, and I'll click open form builder. So if you're unfamiliar with the form builder, along the right side is kind of like our toolbox. These are the different elements that we can add to our form to customize it. In the middle is our scaffolding, what order those things appear in, and then that's where we're going to do all of our customization. And on the left side, it'll be all just our preview of what we've got in our form so far. I'm not going to go through every single one here, but if you've used something like Google Forms to customize a form before, something like that is very similar to that. Um, I think I'm just going to get started on building a form and we'll just kind of talk through it. So I'm going to start with using a data select. So selects in our system are just our drop-down menus. I'm sure you're familiar with this. So immediately by default, it just shows up as a batch select. So I'll change the label here to say batch, and then I'll kind of just leave it at that. Hit the update button, and now I have a nice little batch selector. There is an option in here called relate to data source. When you have a form like this and then you select a batch, when you actually go and create the record for it, this is what attaches this batch to, this record to that batch. So then anything you create that uses this batch selector will then appear under that batch when you go and want to review later on. So that's kind of one part of staying organized and keeping everything together. So really like to put just a batch data select my forms when I can. And then I'm kind of go down and just going to start doing number stuff. So I'm going to pull in a numeric field. So maybe I want a target weight like this. And maybe I want for this one, I'll do just a general tare weight for packaging 3.5 gram bag. So this would be the tare weight for the bag. And then I'm going to pull in something called our repeatable form section. So this is kind of like form inception. There's a form within a form. What it allows us to do is we can create multiple instances of this form within a form, our form. So for this one, I'm going to pull in another numerical field. It's going to be a gross weight. So this will just be when we do our spot check during the process, and we're checking. I think we made like 96 bags in my work order example. We'll check maybe 5 times throughout the process. So this will just make an easy way for someone to go in and just punch in the total number, but we want to check our net weight. So I'm just going to rename the repeatable form section here to spot checks. And I'm going to pull in a math field. So a math field is relatively new if you are using this system as it is, but basically within here, we can do some pretty powerful stuff. But basically we can do math with the other numeric or math or sum, which I'll cover in a bit, fields within our form. So I have these things here, which when I click on them, I copy it. So these are kind of like variables if you're familiar. But to do this, which is going to be our net weight in grams, that's just going to be a gross minus tare. So I'll just hit gross and I'll copy in the variable for that, put in a minus operator, our tare weight. Go ahead and hit update. And then I'll throw in a couple of extra options on this repeatable form section here. I can also enforce a minimum and a maximum number of repeatable sections. So I'll enforce both, and I'll just say, let's just say we're going to do 5 spot checks. So I'll just put 5 in both. So you at minimum need 5, and you can only create up to 5. And I'll kind of pause here for a second because I just made a bunch of fields. I'll hit update on this. I just want to point at the preview section here. There's this red invalid tag. So this tells us, can you even submit this form in this state based on what I've picked and filled out so far? So I'll select a batch. Maybe I'll put in a target weight of 3.55. We want to overfill a bit. Maybe our bag weight is 2 to just keep it simple for me. And then I can hit this new item. And then all I have to do is just fill out a gross weight. So maybe we're perfect on the first spot check. We get 5.55. Our net weight automatically calculates out so we can see that it's at our target weight. And then I can go on to kind of continue to make this. So for sake of brevity, I'm just going to paste 5.55 into the remaining ones. And then you'll see that that red invalid tag turned into this blue valid tag. So basically, you won't even be able to submit this form until all 5 of these filled out. So that's where our form's at so far. And I could stop here, but I kind of want to show off a few more things within this, just to kind of show some other checks that you can put into this if you want. So I'm also going to throw in a sum field at the bottom. So what I'll do is I'll call this sum of checks. And what this allows us to do is it allows me to pick a repeatable section within my form, so spot checks, and then I can pick a number field within that repeatable do sum. So I can sum, for example, all of our net weights. Target weight 3.55, tear weight 2. We'll just put in a couple of these and you can see that our sum is starting to populate. There we go. So I won't go too much farther. I think you understand that this will just kind of continue summing up on these net weights here. But what I can do is I can actually grab another math field, which will once again reset the preview. So what I can actually do is an average of spot checks. Then I could grab maybe my sum of spot checks variable, divide that by 5. Now I could do something like this. So we can get a nice little average out at the bottom of 3.548. So there's a few other things that I could add into this. I could use another math field within my repeatable form section, for example, to, or sorry, just outside of it, to maybe display um, this target weight, like maybe multiplied by 3% to show maybe a 3% variance and what number we're looking to see there. And then we could do the net weight minus the target weight to get that difference. And then you could do a check to make sure that the variance from the target is within bounds, things like that. But I think I'm just going to leave the form as it is right here. And if there's one more thing I'll add is maybe I'll add in a required field here to make sure that we always select a batch so that you can't just go part way here and then just submit this without also submitting a batch. And then maybe I'll just throw in a text area at the bottom, just a place for comments to be left. Cool. So I'll go ahead and I'll update the form now. I'm going to save it and then I'm going to hit the release button. Now my form is available to be used. So I'm going to pull on up to my work order that I was working on, our packaging work order, all our stuff in it. And I'm going to throw in a record. So I'm going to go add new record. It'll pop this up. I've got my 3.5 packaging and process check up here that I can use. So I'll throw that in. And I know I'm using this EF001 batch. And then I know my target weight is going to be 3.55. My tear weight is 2. And then maybe we do our first spot check. So I'll put in my new item. First spot check, 5.57. Just like that. But since we know we need to have at least 5 of these, I can't actually submit it. You see, as I got this grayed out submit button. So instead, what I can do is I can hit the save progress button. And now this record will be in here and it'll have this yellow in progress tag. And we continue producing, packaging, and then I need to do my second spot check. Now I can go back to this work order. I can just click on the record here. It'll pop up the in progress record. I can continue it. I can put another entry. Great. Continue to save progress. And that'll continue to save and update as we go. And then once I complete it, this blue save record button will now appear. When I save it, that'll submit it. That in progress badge now disappears. And we know that this is submitted against the work order. So now it's all kind of in one place. You can have things like maybe pre-production. You could have post-production forms that you could add in this. You could add multiple records. And then it'll give you a much better view on the actual, hey, is everything for this work done that we need to be done before we actually go ahead and close the work order. So once we've submitted this record to this work order, it'll also appear when you download the work order PDF. Any record that's submitted against it will also pull up within that. So if you wanted a more formal view of this work order, you could do that. And then because this record is also attached to the batch, it'll appear in your batch record. But even then, this work order PDF in its entirety will also be pulled into any related batch. So I didn't need to add the batch selector in the form because it would have been pulled in just by um, using the batch itself within the inputs and the output section of this work order. So we can take it a step further now, and I can go to my work order types page, and I can open my packaging work order type. And within this, there's a little section here called required records and related records. So what I could do is I can pull this down and I can actually add my 3.5 packaging and process check. And then I can also add that to my required records. So if I save this, what will happen now is if I go to my work order page and I make a new work order for packaging and I open up this work order, it'll create an in progress record for whatever I put into that related record field. So if I open this now, automatically we have a not started tag next to a brand new in process check, which is pending. So hopefully this can save a lot of ramp up time. You just set up all your forms, you relate them to the right work orders, and now the forms will be in that work order ready to go for when production begins. On top of that, because we also put it into the related records option, when I try and close this work order without this being submitted, it'll tell me that I need to fill out my 3.5 gram packaging and process check before I can actually close off this work. So that will hopefully, reduce your administrative prep for, pre-production. All the records are already here ready to go and it's just a setting. And then hopefully that would also reduce the chances of missing entire forms. And then obviously using different required functionality within each of these forms, you could make sure that all of the right things are filled out. So I'm going to go back to my original work order here. Next thing I want to go over here is putting even more status into this view. So what I could do is I can go to this record directly now that it's submitted. I just go straight to it. And there's a couple buttons up here at the top, verify and lock. So if I hit verify on it, when I do this, you can see a little verification pops up. This will actually do a digital signature against this form as well. And multiple people can verify it, and this is permission controlled. So if I go back to my work order page, you can actually see now I get a green verified tag to know that this has been looked at by someone. And then I can also lock it, which will prevent any changes to this form, including changes to verifications, unless someone with the right permissions goes in and unlocks this form. And that status also shows up on the work order page. You can see it's verified and locked. And so what this can allow us to do is layer your review before quality takes a look at it, or even maybe before this work order is closed. Maybe you have some people doing the floor work, they go in, they submit these things, and maybe their supervisor takes a look, and then they verify it, and then lock it, and then they close the work order. And then right now we don't have the option to verify your own work orders, but since I'm the one that created, I can't verify it, but you could also verify and lock work orders. So the exact same functionality. And you could use that to kind of further refine on the work order list itself, looking for, closed work orders, filtering for just unverified closed work orders could be a good way of finding the work orders that need to be reviewed still. List. Yeah. So that's kind of like the core of what you can do, but it kind of goes even further. We also have recently developed a new feature for record statuses. So within this record, I could also set a status. So maybe let's say I'm a quality person, I'm coming in, there's a mistake in here, something doesn't look right. I can go ahead, I can unlock them. lock the record, and then I could set a status. So I've prepared some statuses against this. So maybe I have a corrections required status, and you could actually throw in a reason here. So maybe, uh, you know, tear weight is out of bounds, something like that. Update that, and then we actually get a little comment box that shows up here related to this status, right? So now the status is set to corrections required. If I go to records page, this actually shows up as a badge on here as well. So you could go to the records page and filter specifically for records that have corrections required. And then we could pop back over to, sorry, I think I want to go to the open. Oh, I want to go to the closed one. So then I could go back here and I could go back into my form and set a new status. Maybe someone goes in, makes the required corrections. So we'll make the edit. We'll go, oops, the tear weight needs to actually be 1.5. Maybe that throws a lot of stuff off in this form. But we'll leave it at that. I'll save this record. Whenever you make changes to a record, there's also an edit history, and you can see that the verification sticks to the version. So you can see that this version was verified, but since then we've made 2 new versions. This would need to be re-verified as well. Maybe I come in, make the corrections. I can set it to ready for review. Fix it up. Update the comment up. Maybe someone else is going to come in here and say, okay, cool. I like this now. You can change the status to review complete. That, re-verify, and relog record. So, and yeah, hopefully that would be able to, well, we've seen that it can really help to kind of streamline the ability to push corrections back out to the floor. It doesn't, we still have the ability to, ping someone and send a notification, but at the very least, it makes that communication a lot easier. Hey, maybe you reopen the work order. Hey, can you take a look at this work order again? There's a couple records in here that needs correction. Look, we left comments on it, and then hopefully that can smooth out some of that part for you. Now, we also have statuses on work orders now as well, with very similar workflow to the record statuses that I was just walking through. But maybe instead of doing the same thing like requires correction, I can just show that you could use it for maybe tracking, priority within operations. So go to actions, I can set status here. I have one set up called high priority. This thing is tagged with high priority. I'll just reopen it as well. Now, if I pop back to my work order page, you can see there's a little high priority tag on this side as well, and you can adjust your filters for that. So obviously you can set your, it's user defined for statuses, so you could set them up to be whatever you like. And then from here, you could filter for specific statuses. So another good way to kind of focus what this list is looking at and help people find what they need to be finding the software when it's pertinent. So hopefully that kind of illustrates how this set of features could help you, speed up a lot of that review process, a lot of the correction process. Obviously, if you're working with paper, just having the ability to access these records without them needing to be physically in front of you is already going to be a pretty big win. But, layering in some process on top of the feature usage here and maybe using some custom permissions, I think you could really do some powerful work here with just making sure that the right people know the state of where things are at in process. If I pop over to my batch list and go into the batch that we were working on as well, you can see in the related items record section that because we tied the batch data select here, this will actually appear within the records. And those verified and locked tags also appear here. And so this could help with a lot of organizational work when it comes to, hey, I need to review this back piece. Um, this will now give a pretty good overview looking down the list, what's been looked at, what hasn't been looked at, and hopefully help focus fire down the remaining forms that aren't verified and things that aren't logged. And you could continue to filter down the page as well. Cool. Um, Last thing I wanted to go over before we open it up to some questions be that we're capturing a lot of information here, just between doing work orders, setting up statuses, verifications, locks, and things like that. So recently, we've been working with a customer of ours to diagnose some problems using the data that we have. This isn't built directly into the software. This is kind of just like a side dashboard that was built. But we were able to pull together some information like this. So our TFT is right the first time. So basically, this is a dashboard that was set up to basically tell us, hey, within a certain time period, how many work orders needed to be reopened, how many have like needed corrections to be done on a record within them, and what's our overall percentage, like how are we performing on that? Um, and then from there, you could maybe drill down. Maybe there's a specific week that wasn't looking so hot. So this is an example of like the week of November 4th. So these are work orders that were closed during that time. Maybe there's specific work orders that you can look at. So you can see lots of not right the first time work orders here. So it can help you diagnose maybe it's certain processes that are going wrong and have issues. And then an operational dashboard, kind of using that high priority method of using on the work order statuses to kind of pull some information on, hey, how much of our in process work is really high priority? We need to get it done faster. How much of it has really, has been in that status for, I guess in this case, 48 hours or more. Give you an idea of processes that are stuck. And then with some other customers, we've also got well, actually, you could just pull this yourself in our report section. Under the quality section, there's a work order verification leg and an average work order verification leg, um, as well as record and work order throughput records. And so these reports here kind of give you some more information of, hey, for specific like form types, for example, you know, how often are they being created, verified, then unverified. So kind of like a little bit more hackier version of what I was showing here in these dashboards, but also having this work order verification leg report here, which kind of tells you the average time it takes for any work order type to be verified after it's been closed. So obviously there's more to build out here, but working on that over time as well. And that pretty well concludes the demo portion. Heard most of what I wanted or everything I wanted to get through, and I can see there's questions filing in here. So start going through some of these. Okay. When filling out a form or work order, does information autosave? What happens if we enter multiple weights and you lose internet? Um, Form or a work order. So on a work order, if you are like filling this in and then you lose internet, I don't know off the top of my head, like if you hit this add button while you're disconnected, if this will just spin an error or if it'll add and close this. But I believe I want to say that this would spin an error. And I think, and I want to say the same thing for the record as well. So I think it would spin an error. I don't know if there's a way for me to test this for you right now. I could maybe. Yeah. Unfortunately, I will just say that if you do happen to lose internet, it's probably just the most recent thing will be lost. So for forms, it would be anything before you would either hit the save record or the save progress button. So if I happened to open this and I was filling some stuff out and then I didn't hit save progress yet, lost internet, then I hit save progress. If it doesn't just error out on you and save what's going on here, then you would lose that progress that you made just on that first fill. And I would say probably the same thing about the batch stuff. Bliss. When can we expect the notification feature? At the moment, I said a page needs correction. I also have to send an email. Otherwise, it can take significant time. Yeah, definitely. We are working on a notification feature. It's not going to be like full on notification feature set that you might be used to in other apps, but we are working on it. Kind of hard for me to give a timeline on it, but we are hoping to roll out something sooner than later when it comes to just some basic notification stuff, and we'll be building it out from that spot. Um, Alex, second situation. Two people each have a section to complete on the same form. The first person completes the section, saves the progress, and the second person fills it out, then submits. When generating the PDF, how can we know that the first person completed the first section and the second person completed the second section? Um, yeah, definitely. So what we could do is, and we're still working on. I'll kind of caveat this. We're still working on improving some of the traceability pieces of these forms exactly. Let me just pull up this old example form I had. So you can see I have multiple versions of this, and as we work through it, there's different versions of this. I believe if I pull the PDF, there's these audit event trails, which say, who went and made those changes. Now, it doesn't say what they changed, and that's something that we have lined up to be worked on soon. Um, but once again, difficult for me to give a timeline on something like that, but that is something that we want to get going. And then there's also an option in your facility settings, bottom, I believe, under batch production record PDF settings, there is a show audit logs on in progress records. So even though we don't display it normally, if you do select this, add on, let's see here, where's you can see that these ones now have this draft change audit log. So these were in that first example I was rolling through and I was saving the progress. These are the in progress versions as I was filling them out. So if there were two people working on it at the same time, if one person saved it, but like the other person saved it afterwards and they were working on it right before them, that would actually overwrite it. So you might actually lose some progress there. So might be a little bit of care, but if you turn that option on, you actually do get a history, including in progress changes, so it's recoverable at the very least. Um,
Jason, we have one other question that was put in the chat function.
oh, yeah, I see it. Is there a way to tell the system to round up on the calculated math cell? For example, the formula gives 3.2, but you want 4. Um, so I think we do want to put in a rounding. Right now, we don't. Um, Save that feedback for sure and throw that in. That we can work on adding something like rounding. I'm not sure if you because you wrote 3.2 and then round to 4. That's like a ceiling round function. So if those are pertinent, please also let us know. And then maybe we can consider adding ceiling and floor functions as well. But we would probably just work on rounding in general first. So you probably just choose how many decimals you want to round to round. Is there a way to lock a section before closing it? Not right now. Right now. I want to have multiple people work on a single form. I don't want the risk of someone changing some accident. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, we don't have a way to lock specific sections of a form off right now. What I will say is if you're working with digital forms and you're not using them a lot right now, Um, Caveat I'll throw in there is, our forms can get pretty long. If you find like sometimes it can be a good strategy to just split out your forms. Obviously, in every case, it's not possible to split up your forms like for role that might be filling something out. Um, but it can be good practice sometimes to kind of chunk it out, especially if you're working in a system. If you're like moving away from paper, where before it was like, oh, well, I don't want to print out like 10 forms. Um, within, when you're working within a digital system where you can just kind of set it up to automatically pull in whatever you need, it could be viable to set up several different forms that just populate in here and different people fill out different early. But that's more of a workaround than a solution here. Um, cool. Just I'm here. All good, Nicholas. Um, yeah. We've got about 20 minutes left until the planned end of the session. Um, maybe I'll give, 5 or so minutes for if anyone else has any questions, but thank you for attending today's session. If you have any questions, if you're interested in the inventory status or the work order status features or digital forms in general, reach out to us, success@elevatedsignals.com, and we can chat and see what's going to be best for us moving forward. But I'll stick around for a few more minutes here just in case any other questions trickle in. But other than that, thank you once again. Cool. If you guys have any other questions as you're trickling out here, feel free to send them over by email. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week. Bye, everyone.